Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. If you could hide to Kolob podcast. My name's Daniel. This is my brother Clive.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, we're in the middle of Ether now, Daniel. Getting into the crux of it, the main story. Yeah, the settlement in America. And I got a lot of interesting facts about it. So, should we jump right into it?
Well, I do have a quote for us to start with, and this is from a book called Habits of Holy Men, written by Don H. Staheli. Don, if you're listening, apologies on the pronunciation of your name, and Lloyd D. Newell. And this is from the chapter called Choosing Humility. Even those who face humbling circumstances retain their right to choose resentment and bitterness. Yes, even when life compels us to be humble, humility remains a choice that we alone can make. And then it goes on to say, in Screwtape Letters, C.S. Lewis' imaginative conversation between two devils, one of the devils notes with concern that a man they are trying to deceive is developing humility. The devil suggests to his associates a solution. Your patient has become humble. Have you drawn his attention to the fact? Dieter F. Uchtdorf expressed, we don't discover humility by thinking less of ourselves. We discover humility by thinking less about ourselves.
Wise.
So wise.
So wise.
Dieter F. Uchtdorf, who turned 83 recently as well, I believe. All right, what are we looking at today? So we're in Ether, and we talked a lot about "tight like unto a dish," one of our all-time favorite quotes. And we also talked about the brother of Jared named Mahonri Morionkama, as told by Joseph Smith later on in life.
Which we had the disagreement. I think that's one name. You think it's two?
I think,
yeah. Moving on.
Yeah. Let's move on. Okay, so where should we start? Should we just get straight into the passages?
Yeah, okay. Well, look, we talked about how he built the ships. They had light with the stones. And now that the Lord is causing these furious winds to push the boat. If you remember from last week, my amazing skills of predicting where the currents go. It must have been a hard journey for that. So the Lord, it says that they were buried many times in the depths of the sea because of the mountainous waves.
Yeah.
So obviously it was a very, very rough trip, right? And it's explained why this has to be in verse 8. And it came to pass that the wind did never cease to blow towards the promised land while they were upon the waters. And thus they were driven forth before the wind. So it didn't stop because it had to blow them to the promised land. That's what it was. But I mean, to me, it sounds just terrible. But
it sounds like a horrible time.
Yeah, but it says in the next verse that they sang praises to the Lord. They continued to pray the Lord all the livelong day and all the night. They continued to pray the Lord. They were driven back and forth, and no monster of the sea could break them. So yes, terrible, but still high spirits. And you think as well, so they were actually on the water for 344 days. Noah, he was on his ark for 366 days. So again, it's very similar to the Noah's story, but 344 days to be pushed continuously through this. I mean, it would have been hard for them. And again, they all had all those animals, didn't they, on the boat?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a big, like, if you think about it, it's a big expedition and lots of people to worry about, but they didn't have any way of communicating with each other. So I do wonder if, where obviously there were times where they were just floating on the top of the water and they were able to pop open the little trap that they had at the top, and they were able to go up and let some oxygen in and let some good UV rays in. But did they get up and just not see anyone else? Or, because I imagine as well, it would be quite lonely. I guess they're singing the praises of the Lord, but did they worry about their brethren? Did they go, okay, we're getting hammered. I hope they're okay. I hope we're taking the brunt of it and everyone else is fine. Or did they sometimes bump into the ship and they knew that the other boats were okay?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess you'd be hoping you're on Mahonri Morionkama's boat. Yeah, when they're picking different. All right, we got 8 ships. Who's going? Well, where are you going? Because I'm going with you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hiding in your boat. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I'm in Jared's or the brother of Jared's.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. But they made it after, like I said, after 344 days. In verse 12, it talks about how they made it to where the Nephites call the land desolation. Now, the land desolation, that's south, well, it's north, but it's south of the North American continent, right?
Right. Well, there's one thing I wanted to draw your attention to here that I found a bit quirky in the text, and that was in verse 10. So we're in chapter 6, verse 10. And thus they were driven forth, and no monsters of the sea could break them, neither whale that could mar them. And they did have light continually, whether it was above the water or under the water. So they obviously had the light under the water from the stones that the Lord prepared for the brother of Jared, which we are reminded about in verse 2. But I thought there was an interesting point here because it must have been in the record. And so it was enough of a point to add into our record, right? Like the brother of Jared, whoever's written on their plates has gone, we were all good. We were hit, we saw whales, we got hit by whales a couple of times, but nothing could actually break the boat, and the boat was super sturdy.
Yeah.
Like they must have had, well, I don't know if they must have, but I feel like almost they've had those experiences to know to write them down because, they're living in the middle of the Arabian continent, right?
Yeah,
They don't
yeah.
know they don't know what whales are. You know what I mean? Like, so they've obviously must have had these encounters to record it and go, we were hit by these things. Later on, Joseph Smith interprets them as being called whales, but we were hit with these things were there, but nothing could destroy us and nothing could hurt our little boats. Otherwise, they
Someone,
wouldn't know that actually anything is in the ocean.
yeah, some hit
Like,
us. It was a floating person. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Like,
yeah,
yeah, how did
because
they know?
they don't know that whales exist, surely, unless
Yeah.
they talk to sailors. But even then, I think that's a bit of a challenge. Monsters of the sea. We saw,
Although
and
it was early days, so they did have the records about Adam and Eve. They knew all about them and the creation. The creation talks about the whales of the sea.
right,
But then, yeah, they did talk about monsters of the sea. So
yeah,
I guess they only really knew about whales and fish, and
mm,
possibly they didn't know what else is in there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is
Anyway,
interesting.
I thought it was a bit of a quirky verse
I
that
guess
was kind of
if
left.
we get dropped into the desert and we see things we don't recognize, yeah, we wouldn't just automatically go, "Well, it's a camel." Well, we would because it's a camel.
Well, like camels extreme, but not something else that we don't know what it's called.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Is that a
Yeah.
friendly snake or a not friendly snake?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, just an interesting point in the text that I thought when I was reading this through, like, oh, what do you mean, no monsters? Anyway, continue. So yes, so you're on verse 12, and they did. So they finally land on in the shore of the promised land, which we know as the Americas. They set their feet upon, and I imagine that first time I was really, really seasick. Actually, on our honeymoon, me and my wife's honeymoon, really seasick. I mean, the waves were at least 55 meters high. Yeah, they would have been. They would have been way less. But I'm gonna say that they were super high,
Yeah.
and I got so seasick. And then we hopped off this boat and hopped onto this glass bottom boat up in Cairns. We were, and that when we got off that boat onto a little sand island, it was like the greatest day of my whole life. Like as soon as I put my feet on this little sandbank and knew that I wasn't on that boat anymore. Oh, just an amazing feeling.
Was it just like the brother of Jared, where it says, "Did shed tears of joy"? Once they made it to the land.
Well, I don't think I shed tears, but thank goodness I don't have to vomit anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, so I just imagine the relief and the excitement, this journey that they've been on for 300 plus days and everything that they've been through of, their languages. They asked the Lord to not confound their language. That was done. They built these boats. That was done. They might have had some run-ins with a whale. That was all sorted. And now they finally get there and just, you can see just absolute joy and did shed tears of joy before the Lord because of the multitude of his tender mercies, the multitude of the tender mercies of the Lord over these people. They didn't just say, oh, he got us here. There was like, he did this for us and this and this and this and this. He did 55 things for us. in the objective of getting us here.
So they made it to this promised land, and we've talked about, it's Jared, the brother of Jared, friends and family. There's
Yep.
22 of them altogether. So they finally made it to land, and it's their job now. Okay, well, we have to create this civilization, and we have to grow this civilization. And so, just like Adam and Eve, just like Noah and his family, they've become these first of these people to make it. Now, what is interesting here? So I've spoken about this book I got a while ago called Great Civilizations in the Book of Mormon. And that talks about that there was an ancient civilization which we call the Olmecs, who built these huge structures in Veracruz, Mexico. And archaeologists says that they just appeared out of nowhere and must have come from somewhere with already having this knowledge, which I thought was really, really
And
interesting.
what did you call them? Olmec.
Olmecs. So I just
Yeah.
want to read, if I may, just this little bit here from the book. And it says, Olmec culture hundreds of years earlier than the Christian era, appearing suddenly out of nowhere in a state of full development, they constitute a culture that seems to have been the root, the mother culture, from which the later and better known Mayan cultures sprang.
Right.
So,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
it is interesting. And the date of the Olmecs date roughly around when the brother of Jared and those would have come. So really fascinating, which again, it just proves the Book of Mormon, but it's just interesting historical fact that, this is the time when these things were found.
Really, really interesting. Okay, well, so they get there, and one point that I wanted to make clear was verse 18. It came to pass that they began to spread upon the face of the land and to multiply and to till the earth, and they did wax strong in the land. So they immediately get there and they're industrious. They don't get there and they're going, Lord, you need to send us this, send us this. They immediately get there and they're able to get to work. So obviously they had skills, they had some farming skills, but they began to work the land immediately. So they're very organized, they know what to do, and they're able to get on with the work. And
Yeah.
then we kind of fast forward lots of years, right? Because they get there, they tell us how many people there are. They tell us that the record tells us that they get there and crack on with it. And then in the very next breath, the brother of Jared is old and he's going to die. And so him and Jared get people together and they start discussing, well, who's going to take over the land?
Well, that's right. So they gathered people together and he asked them, well, what do you want of me before I die? And they said that they wanted a king to be elected. But the brother of Jared was against this because he said in verse 23, and now behold, this was grievous unto them. And the brother of Jared said unto them, surely this thing leadeth into captivity. They wanted a king. So the brother of Jared's firstborn, he said that no, he doesn't want to be the king. So then they said, well, we should restrain him and force him to be king. But he said, no one should be restrained, be forced into king. So he keeps asking his sons. And he asks all of Jared's sons, and all of them said no as well, except for one called Orihah, Jared's son
Yeah.
Orihah.
Yeah.
And he was a great king. He was now, like you said, years have passed now, and he was a great king. He was humble before the Lord. He even said that he walked with the Lord and made the people rich. So great king, but as we'll go on to read, that it didn't turn out well for everyone. So all of his days, all the time he was alive, he had 31 children, which was just amazing.
Just simply too many, by the way.
It's three's too many. We've got them.
Yeah. Let's hope they don't listen to this episode.
And when he died, Kib became the king.
Yep.
Now,
Yeah, we're now in chapter 7 as well, if you're following along.
We are in chapter 7 now. The thing that I decided to do with this is I did a bit of a chart of who was this person and who was their offspring and what was important about that time. So I'm just going to skim through it really quickly, try not to bore everyone. So Kib had a son named Corihor, not Corihor, but Corihor. I should have looked up the pronunciation before I started this, actually.
I think it's going to be the same.
You reckon just spelled slightly different? Okay. Now Korihor starts his own army, becomes quite wicked, and he actually captures his father, Kib. Now, Kib has another son while in captivity named Shul, and Shul frees Kib and defeats Korihor.
Yeah. A lot of
Now,
infighting in the family.
a lot of infighting, but there's a lot of people by this stage. So, I mean, Orihor has 31 kids by himself. You imagine everyone else has. So then Shul, sorry, Korihor has a son named Noah. So it's now Kib's grandson Noah, and he beats Shul and takes over the land, and he captures Shul, which would be his uncle, right?
Right.
So now Shul has sons who creep into Noah's house at night and kill him and save Shul. Okay, everyone keeping up so far. I hope so.
Yeah. I was actually just thinking, how many generations is this since the brother of Jared? Is it 3?
Well, it's one. I guess Kib would be the brother of Jared's or Jared's
Grandson?
grandson. So yeah, so you're right. So it would be three because then Shul would be his great grandson, and Noah would be his great grandson as well.
Right. So we're so just when you said then there's a lot of people there, they've had they've had 100 years of living on the land by this stage.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so.
So you're right. So there is quite a lot of people.
And there's a lot. There's so much that happens in this small couple of chapters that maybe we'll put this up on the page to just understand. Okay, who's who had what, and what did they do? So Noah has a son named Kohor, Cohor, who now the new king over Noah's people went to battle with Shul and died. So he's out pretty quick. Kohor has a son named Nimrod, who
Yep.
gives up
We're
the
we're on verse
kingdom.
22 if anyone's
Yeah.
following along.
So he gives up the kingdom back to Shul. Now, King Shul made a law that gave power to prophets. And so now, there's obviously a lot of people. So he gives power to prophets that wherever they go, they're able to preach. And at this stage now, a lot of people turn back to righteousness and the people repent. And it says that there was no more wars for the rest of Shul's life. So, yes, there's been a lot of infighting, but it's come full circle. The people are righteous again, and there's no more fighting within. Just a few more here in
Just a
chapter
bit going on then.
8. Yeah, yeah. So in chapter 8, I'm just going to run through it really quick, and then we can talk about it. So now there's a man named Omna, who is Nimrod's son. He has a son named Jared. Now, he rebelled and dwelt in Heath and gathered half of the kingdom, Jared did, and goes and captures his father Omna. This is years
Right.
later. Now, Omna has two sons while in captivity, Esrom and Coriantumr, who went to battle against Jared, their brother, whom lost and pled for his life. So Esra and Coriantumr agreed that Jared can live, but they defeated the rest of his army. Now, Jared has a daughter. It doesn't say what her name is, but he has a daughter, and she comes up to her father, and she actually shows her father the ancient records that they brought with them about from the old world, and it had an account in there about a secret plan to obtain the kingdoms for great glory. Now we know that was obviously Cain made a deal after he killed Abel. So these secret combinations, they're starting up, or when I say they're starting up, this is way before, the Gideon robbers.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Gadianton robbers.
So now there's this wickedness. Now, the daughter of Jared makes a deal with Kimna, who is just another guy that's just randomly popped up, and he has
Right.
a son named Akish. Now, she makes a deal that she will marry Akish, and Jared would, she said to her dad, Jared, say that, make him marry me, but you'll only approve it if they bring Omna's head. So if they kill Omna, right? So now
This is a
there's
huge story.
the huge story, and this is only 2 chapters, right?
Yeah.
So that is what happens in this. So those stories happen. There's fighting, then there's goodness, then there's fighting again. And now we get these secret combinations. Now, Akish makes a deal with these men, and they go and kill the king. Now, Moroni jumps in,
Mm.
and for the
I
rest of
love
the
this little
chapter,
insert of Moroni.
Yeah, me too.
And
Because
we're now up to we're chapter 8, verse 20, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, it's basically 19 to 26 is when Moroni gives his 2 cents. Now, he comes in and he warns against the things that are being done because he's seen it firsthand. So
Yeah.
he's gone, this is happening, but hey, I'm going to jump in now just to warn you people that this does happen and this has happened. And I can testify that it's not going to be great for those that have done this. And what I find interesting, Daniel, without getting into too much detail about
Yeah.
Satan and the wicked things that he does, you've got Cain who starts these secret combinations. Now you've got Jared and his daughter that have brought back these secret combinations. You've got the Gadian robbers. These are thousands of years in between. Do you think that these things still happen today? These secret combinations, these secret works of darkness, these
Definitely.
deals with Satan.
Well, I think that the Book of Mormon is written for our time.
Yeah.
And I think that, I was just thinking about that where you were telling the story. What is the purpose? What's the reason why this was placed into our record? It could have easily have just been missed or just not been put in at all. We would have been none the wiser. But it has been put in for a reason. And I think it's for us to be very, very aware of. Like, that these things do happen. And it's not weird or, sometimes it's a bit taboo to call things out that are happening. But things happen in darkness, I think, all the time. And for us, so what is the purpose? Well, the purpose for us is if we don't stay close to the Lord, this is the kind of garbage that you have to deal with. And great nations crumble. Like the Lord doesn't act differently in the Book of Mormon times to how he acts now. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Lord is the same, and the way he dealt with people back then can easily be dealt with the same now, and I'm sure is dealt with the same now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely, to answer your question directly, I definitely think yes, this happens today.
See, I mean, uh, the most famous, I think, of our day is probably Aleister Crowley from the 1920s. Huge Satanist that had a lot of people following him. And
Right.
I think, yeah,
I
I
don't
think you're
know of
right.
this man,
Oh,
but I
he
was
was,
more thinking of this on a governmental level.
oh, okay.
I was more thinking this on these people are of the closest thing to a government.
Yep.
And I think this kind of stuff happens on a governmental level all the time, but I'm not sure that's where this podcast is going.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in that sense, the Lord says, there's two ways. You're either prompted by the Lord or you're not. And I guess those that aren't, they fall into wickedness. So, yeah, just interesting how, you know, history unfortunately repeats itself with wickedness, in good stuff as well, but in wickedness, these secret combinations happen, then they happen again, and then they
Yeah.
happen again. And, it seems like these people don't really learn or truly understand the doctrine if that's the way they want to go. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess the point of those last two chapters were so much time has passed, and there's good and there's bad and there's wickedness and there's righteousness,
And we
and yeah,
see that we see that for really the rest of the book of Ether. There is so much. I mean, you only have to read the heading of chapter 10. One king succeeds another. Some of the kings are righteous, others are wicked.
yeah,
Like a really, really challenging time. And if you think about geographically, the Americas geographically, that continent, there's a huge spread of people. There's lots and lots of generations. Before these people die out, there's lots of generations, lots of splinters, lots of people living in this area and that area, and these kings and those kings. And so you can see that the area was peopled and has been peopled for a long time.
yeah. Well, I guess these are the first people, these Jaredites, wouldn't they? Well,
Yeah,
after the flood, when we were in America and then we're in the Middle East. Now we're back in America.
right.
Turkey, right? That's where the ark landed.
I don't know if are we declaring that.
I think it's pretty safe to declare it. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you sure?
I'm 99% sure it landed in Turkey. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Has any prophet declared such a thing, or is that just our interpretation of that boat that was
Just
supposedly landed on that?
Yeah, just archaeological finds. Plus, there's a visitor center there. So,
Is it?
yeah, if you ever want to visit Mount Sinai, there's a visitor center.
Maybe let's put a link up,
Yeah. Hey,
put some pictures up.
if anyone's going to Turkey anytime soon.
Yeah, let me know. Okay, there's a couple of other things, Clive, in chapter 11. So we like I said, we so people who are following along, bit of a weird episode. I mean, there's just lots of stories and there's lots of fighting. From if we think about the Book of Ether is really like the Book of Mormon, just in a few short chapters. There's a people who are faithful in one part of the world. They hop on a boat, go to another part of the world, and then they're righteous, and then all of a sudden there's wicked people and not wicked people, and they're fighting and fighting and fighting. Not too dissimilar to the Lehites who go over to Americas. They are righteous, then there's a lot of infighting, and then they kind of die out. And that's what that's the ether is the Book of Mormon we just don't know as much about the Jaredites as we know about the rest of the scriptures, right? But it's essentially the same. It's two groups of people who are quick to forget the Lord.
Don't you think it's fascinating how that works, right? So the brother of Jared and Jared warned, okay, if you do have a king, there will become corruption.
It's going to fall apart as soon as you go to a king system.
That's right. And it's just like, remember the Stanford prison experiment where as soon as someone gets a little bit of power, they just want more. So, you know, there's righteous kings, don't get me wrong, but then there's other people that go, well, I want to be king now, and I'm going to get it the way I want to get it. And the Book of Mormon and Ether, you're right, the Ether is just the Book of Mormon on a smaller scale, but it just shows that once Satan gets into the hearts of people just a little bit, he can build and build and build and go, okay, well, you should be king. Oh, well, they're not going to let you king. Well, then maybe we should build an army, and then what? And then threaten them. Oh, they're still not going to do it. Well, then go to battle with them.
Yeah, you deserve to be king. There's no one better than you. There's no God that's better than you. You are the one.
Yeah,
it's very difficult.
Yeah, and this
slippery slope, maybe.
Exactly, poisoned by degrees. We talked about that in Alma. When the king was poisoned by degrees. So again, it's the same with Satan. He poisons you by degrees until eventually you die. But yeah, you look at Nephi and Lehi, or Lehi, in fact, as the patriarch of the family. He was promised this land that his children could prosper in, and wickedness ensued, which is where we're up to now with Moroni. And then same with Jared and the brother of Jared. Hey, I've got this land for you. You're going to work hard to get there, but once you get there, it's going to be a promised land for you. And wickedness again ensues, and all of these corruptions and all these wars start to happen.
Okay, well, a really interesting episode to talk through, but we'll wrap it up here. And next week we're talking about Ether. So we got chapter 12 to chapter 15 next week, and we look forward to talking about that. Thank you for listening to another episode. If you could hi to Kolob Podcast, we'll catch you on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And we're really enjoying this Book of Mormon year. We're almost at the end. We will see you next week.